airborne troops, the men who were to spearhead the invasion, had meanwhile been assembling at command departure points. These tough fighting men who were to drop behind the enemy's coastal defenses in parachutes and gliders had the extremely critical mission of preventing enemy counterattacks from upsetting the plan of our main assault forces. These airborne troops would be fighting the enemy and destroying his lines of communication 5 hours before the main assault forces hit the beaches. Covered by watchful air fighters, the American units left their various harbors in southeastern England to meet the British units at a rendezvous off the Isle of Wight. Our strategic air bombardment never let up. Through endless attacks on key bridges and rail centers, the ability of the enemy to shift reserves was fatally restricted. Under complete radio silence, each ship took its proper place in the vast armada. At twilight came the signal for the dash across the channel. At command departure points, gliders and their tow planes were standing ready for the night's operation. Speeds and altitudes were assigned to tow plane pilots, and glider pilots were given a final briefing on all that was known to our intelligence regarding the conditions likely to be found in the drop zones. Each unit's mission was clearly defined. Earlier in the day, General Gavin had a final talk with his men. General Eisenhower paid a visit to the airborne infantry. These men were assigned to 6 Pathfinder units. Takeoff, 2,310 hours of D-1. Time for the airborne spearhead to get going. At more than a dozen fields, paratroopers filed out of hangars on schedule and marched to their planes. Each combat team carried adequate equipment to complete its mission independently, for it was recognized that a night drop into heavily defended enemy territory by such large forces was bound to create a wild state of confusion on both sides. Parapacks of heavy equipment would be released separately. Gliders were loaded with equipment first. Each pilot checked his list of passengers. Paratroopers put on their full load of equipment, adjusting each item with extreme care. To hit the dirt just right with a full load of equipment is a highly specialized business. Final check by the jump master, the most particular man in the outfit. Paratroopers board their planes. Leg packs containing demolition supplies will be released by the men while in midair. Thus, each man will hit the dirt close to his pack. The success of the mission depended upon the rapid destruction of certain key enemy installations. The gliders take off. The heavily armed men in them, a short while before, had listened to a message from the Supreme Commander. You are about to embark on a great crusade. The eyes of the world are upon you, and the hopes and prayers of all liberty-loving people are with you. The vast convoy of seaborne assault forces stood deployed against 50 miles of French coastline. American forces were commanded by Lieutenant General Bradley. British and Canadian forces were under command of Lieutenant General Dempsey. Shattering the dawn 90 minutes before H hour, the naval bombardment opened up. It was like a convulsion of nature. More shell tonnage was expended in 1 hour than in the entire Allied naval campaigns of World War I. Each warship had its assigned targets, its individual schedule of fire. Prime targets were the enemy's powerful coastal guns. Infantry units that would comprise the second assault wave began transferring into their assault boats. The first assault wave was already standing by, waiting for the signal to dash inshore. The last phase of air bombardment began at 05:30, 1 hour before touchdown of the ground troops. Streams of heavy, medium, light, and fighter bombers crossed the channel in the most intensive airstrike of the entire assault operation. Objective, to isolate the battle area until we could consolidate our beachheads and begin the breakthrough. The big guns poured it on. Combat teams, each on a schedule, continued their unloading into assault boats. There would be little time between the first assault wave and the second. Now the rocket ships opened up, smashing at underwater obstacles and coastal mines, over the heads of the first wave of assault troops, firing their massed salvos with close precision until the troops were 300 yards from the beaches. The fury from the air went on and on. Our airmen in tactical support of the ground forces took no rest that day. Back from one sortie, they gassed up, loaded their bombs and ammunition belts, and grimly went out again and again. The big guns raised their sights as the assault boats went in and smashed at the enemy's gun batteries farther inland. Yet so ingeniously fortified was this coastal zone that despite the deluge of bombs and shells from our air and sea bombardment, enemy counterfire was still effective as our men neared the beaches. Our first assault wave had a full share of heartbreaking misadventures. Many of their boats were hung up and wrecked on steel hedgehogs. Plunging fire from enemy batteries was extremely accurate. In the confusion, boats went astray or got out of control and crashed into one another. Forced to jump out of sinking boats, many men had to discard their weapons and equipment to save themselves from drowning. Casualties in the first hour were heavy. The British fired at fortified houses as they came in, smashing many a sniper's nest and observation post. In one American sector, fire from enemy pillboxes kept many of our men pinned against the shore cliffs. Our casualties were high. In the British sector, special duty engineers hit the beach first, with the medics and infantry following. With the beachhead secure, the infantrymen lost no time in driving on to other objectives. The second assault wave came in. In one American sector, enemy resistance was only sporadic and was quickly silenced. Our forces made substantial penetrations in the first hours. So it went on the beaches of Normandy this fateful day in June. Reinforcements continued to pour ashore. Artillery and heavy engineering equipment were firmly established. The German boast that an invading force could not remain ashore for 9 hours had been flung back on the now desperate defenders. Hitler's fortress had been cracked. The great gamble had been won, having accomplished what many European military leaders believed never could be done, a cross-channel invasion. The Allies were now in position to apply their great power to the methodical destruction of the German armed might, to bring retribution to the fiendish criminals that had conceived it, to scourge it and them from the face of the earth.